Good evening. Good evening. Chuck's a tough act to follow, but my name is Ken Falkenstein. I am running for school board at large, and I'm running to restore excellence and accountability to our schools. And the reason that excellence and accountability has to be restored to our schools is because we currently have a school board that is dominated by teachers union members. Now, the point of the teachers union, they call themselves the Virginia Beach Education Association. They're affiliated with the National Education Association. But you all are well-informed, educated people, and you know that what the education associations are there for is to look out for the professional interests of the teachers. They are not there to promote education. Our school board has become deferential to the school administration ever since the teachers union took it over. What does that mean? How many of you are familiar with that grading policy that came out a few months ago for the middle schools and high schools? Vicky Manning was the leader in the opposition to that, and you'll hear from her in a little while, and I helped her with that. There was this grading scheme, and the idea was that teachers would be prohibited from including in grades anything other than test scores on the subject matter. And even there, they'd have to let students retake the test until they get the grade they want. Teachers would be prohibited from including in grades homework or classwork or tardiness. Teachers would be required to accept all homework and classwork late up to the last day of the 9-week period. Now, you want to talk about looking out for the teachers for a second? Imagine that poor teacher who's at the end of the 9-week period trying to grade the final test for the quarter, trying to prepare the report cards, and we'll talk about those in a minute, and then has to accept all of the homework and classwork from every student for the entire quarter. But the way you get this stuff, and by the way, this was sailing through. This was very likely going to become the policy of the Virginia Beach schools had it not been for a bunch of parents who stood up and said no. And the reason that it was sailing through is because we've got a teachers union school board that's a rubber stamp for the administration. Now, the administration has done a lot of good things. We do have a good administration. Dr. Spence, Aaron Spence, is a good man. But they're not perfect, and what happens is you have these ideas that come from these pointy-headed academics in their ivory towers at the universities who say, hey, I've got an idea. And then they send it down to the administration and they say, hey, that looks good. And then they send it to the school board, and that's when the school board matters. Because if you've got a teachers union dominated school board that is showing deference to the administration, letting the administration lead, then that stuff actually becomes the policy, and that's how you end up with stuff like the elementary school grading system with NP and DP. Anyone understand any of that stuff? How many of you know what I'm talking about there? The teachers don't know what that means. I've talked to them. They don't know how to use it, so there can't be any consistency. There's no way the parents could understand it, but that stuff gets through when you have a school board that rubber stamps what the administration wants. The school board should be treating the administration and its ideas with respect, but not deference. The school board sets policy, the school board needs to lead. I'm running because I've got 3 kids in this school system. I've got one kid who's entering 4th grade, I've got one that's entering kindergarten, and he's got a twin brother with special needs. My son Josh has Down syndrome, autism, hearing and vision deficits, a lot of disabilities. So one of the reasons I'm running is because I want to bring to the school board the firsthand experience of being a special needs parent to make sure that every family in the school system that has a kid with special needs is getting the services and respect that they're entitled to. If I get elected, I'll be the only special needs parent on the school board. In fact, if I get elected, I'll be the only dad with kids in the school system on the school board. If I get elected, I'll be the only attorney on the school board. There's one right now, he's not running for re-election, so I'd like to bring that experience. I'm a veteran, I served in the Army for 4 years. I'm the former president of the Down Syndrome Association of Hampton Roads. I was a former legislative assistant to U.S. Senator John Warner. I've been in the trenches fighting for conservative values and ideas for 30 years. I know this stuff, and I'm running because what's going on with our school board now ain't right, and we gotta fix it. My name is Ken Falkenstein. I'm running for school board at large to bring excellence and accountability to our school system. I've got more information back there. I've got a website. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next school board candidate is Stephen Johnson. And could you tell us what school positions are you running for?
I'm running at large.
At large, and you're running?
I'm entering the Rose Hall District. And it's mandatory that I say this, but everybody gets to vote for everybody in the city of Virginia Beach. Good evening, my name is Stephen Johnston. Why am I running for school board? I'm running for school board because there's more to education than just academics. There's music, there's art, there's theater. Our children go to school, they learn how to act in small groups, medium groups, and large assemblies. They learn how to deal with people from different races and different cultures. They also learn responsibility and accountability. They learn responsibility by being asked to show up to class on time, doing your homework, turning your projects in when they're due, and studying for tests. They learn accountability by receiving low grades when they don't do that. This past winter, the Virginia Beach School Board and several committees tried to take accountability and responsibility out of our school system. They wanted to say that homework could no longer be counted part of your grade. They wanted to say teachers could not give out zeros. They wanted to say if you did poorly on a test, you could retake that test until you did something better. That is just not right. Our children will not be prepared for the real world. Can you imagine somebody going to a job, not expecting to have their work done on time, not expecting to show up on time? They're not going to have their job for very much longer. Some of the other issues I'm running on is I want to expand full-day kindergarten to all the schools in Virginia Beach. Currently, the only schools that have full-day kindergarten for everybody are the Title I schools. And we do have some extended day kindergarten classes being spread throughout the city, but it's not for everyone. I want to put the ABC grades back into our elementary schools, get rid of the standards-based grading that they have now. I want to put cursive writing back in our school curriculum at all grade levels. I want to see that the bus drivers are paid a fair wage. And it's simple economics of supply and demand. Right now, Virginia Beach, we pay our teachers the most of anybody in the region, and we have a waiting list for teachers. According to several websites I've been to, we pay our bus drivers the least in the region. Wow. This year we had 70 vacancies at the end of the year. That's 70 buses that aren't rolling, picking up our children and taking them to school. That's not right. If we want to fill our bus seats, or fill bus driver seats, we are just going to have to open the checkbook and start paying our bus drivers what the economy and the free market says they deserve to be paid. My name is Stephen Johnston. I am running for the Rose Hall District, and I appreciate your support and your vote this November. Thank you.
Okay. And our next speaker is Vicky Manning. And which seat are you running for?
I'm running at large.
You're running at large as well.
I'm going to use the podium.
All right.
I must not be as experienced as these other guys. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak here today. My name is Vicky Manning, and I'm running for the position of school board at large. I've lived in Virginia Beach for nearly 25 years, and I'm thankful for our beautiful community, its people, and our great schools. I'm married to my wonderful husband, Scott, who serves in the United States Navy. He was active duty and now reserves for almost 28 years now. We have two energetic sons going into the 7th and 8th grades. 2 years ago, I learned of new grading practices being quietly implemented in our schools that lowered standards. I brought this to the attention of the school board. No one seemed to know about it. These practices included teachers not being able to give zeros, they couldn't deduct points for work turned in late, and they were being encouraged to give test retakes. I formed a team of parents and teachers, and we fought back against these radical changes that were causing bad habits to be developed by our students, including my own, and causing extra work for our teachers. We prevented major policy changes from being implemented, but our fight continues since the board has not yet adopted policy to retract these grading practices. I have been analyzing data about our schools, and I discovered that we have some great improvement in graduation rates. From 2010 to 2015, all 11 high schools have seen an increase in their graduation rates. However, I also discovered that during the same time period, SAT scores decreased in all but one of those schools. These statistics, along with the removal of accountability in grading, could indicate grade inflation occurring in our schools. I want to be sure that our children's education is not being watered down and that our students are being taught important life skills such as accountability in order to prepare them for the workforce and college. I decided to run for the office of school board so that I could make a difference in creating a more educated and accountable generation of citizens in our community. There are many topics that I'd like to tackle if elected, but the top 3 issues that I have are: number 1, accountability in grading. We need to ensure standards are not being lowered and that students are being taught accountability. I removed my sons from their public school a year ago because of these bad habits that were being taught. Students stopped studying because they knew they could retake tests. Why study the first time if you know you can retake it? Students stopped turning in work on time because they knew there would be no ramifications. Teachers told me they felt they were losing control of their classrooms because they couldn't get students to turn in their assignments, and they were overwhelmed with work because they had to constantly come up with new versions of tests for their retakes. The school board must adopt policy to retract and prevent these grading practices. Number 2, improved teacher morale. These grading practices were quietly implemented. No one would have known about these practices had I not brought it to the attention of the board. Teachers were not given an opportunity to provide input, and they felt that if they spoke out against the administration's policies, they would be fired. Teachers are the ones on the front lines, and we need to be sure that their voices are heard without fear of ramifications. Number 3, a transparent and streamlined administration. We have a top-heavy administration, and I want to look at ways to streamline it so that we can use that money in better ways, such as hiring more teachers to reduce class sizes. We need to demand more transparency in the actions of our administrators and more oversight by our school board to prevent the lowering of standards. My sons want to return to their public school. I want them to get the best education possible. They have the desire to one day attend the United States Naval Academy, like their father and their grandfather. If we don't get our schools back on the right path, our students are not going to be competitive to attend colleges like the Naval Academy. For those students who aren't attending college, and college certainly isn't for everyone, we need to ensure that they are prepared with the skills to enter the workforce. I ask for your vote on November 8th, and if you're interested in helping my campaign in any way, my friend Cindy Becker is here also, and we'd love to have an opportunity to talk with you and meet with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Watch your step, please. I apologize for the wires everywhere. Okay, so now we will entertain questions for our panel. Anybody have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jackie Witt, and I have 2 kids. One is graduated. My kids went to private school, and I've worked in a private school for almost 20 years. And one of the issues about schools that I have is when you name problems with accountability, what happens to the students that get the zeros, that don't do their work, where do they go when the teacher says, this kid doesn't belong here? There are students in my class who do want to do the work. There are students who want to study, who want to turn in their homework. When you have students who are not working, not turning in the work, what happens to them?
Okay, Ken, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of it is situational. I think it's important. I think what I hear you saying is, how do you prevent kids from slipping through the cracks? Is that kind of where you're going?
No, I'm not saying how you prevent it. I'm saying, are you willing to boot those kids out?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Are you willing to kick their parents in the butt and make them accountable for their kids not showing up, the tardiness, the homework? It takes parents working at home. It takes, people being responsible for what's happening, and what's happening is that nobody is paying attention to that. You've got kids in there who are working. You've got parents who are responsible. It's not fair to them to have all the underachievers who don't want to be there.
Okay, so there are a variety of things that we can do. We have the Renaissance Academy.
Yeah, have you been there?
Have I been there?
Have
No.
you been to the Renaissance Academy? It's
No.
not a nice place.
Right, and
Could we please just give them a chance
Yeah,
to answer?
okay, sorry.
the purpose of the Renaissance Academy essentially is what, when I was a kid, they used to call it reform school. And the idea was a great idea. You take the kids that are distracting the good kids, get them out of the school so you get rid of that distraction, and put them in a place where they can get the discipline to be rehabilitated, if possible, and get them back on the right track. And it was a great idea. They stopped doing it for a long time around the country, largely because a disproportionate number of kids that were being sent were minorities, and there were some political issues. Virginia Beach, I think, has shown leadership by bringing the concept back. So that's one thing that we could do. If we're not doing it as well as we can, then we need to look at that.
The reality is that parents who have the money will avoid Renaissance and will go to a private school and pay tuition rather than send their kid to Renaissance.
Well, the school board,
We need to not have like a
Right.
back and forth.
The school board-
Go on with
All
the
right,
next person.
okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you. I attended Plaza Junior High School here in Virginia Beach. And at the time, Dr. Brickle was our superintendent. And he came out with a policy that not everybody liked, but it was true. He said children have a right to fail.
Yes.
You cannot force children to do everything they can. And as long as the children are not disrupting the classroom, they can sit in the back of the classroom and play on their phones. Personally, my kids would never do that. Education's a three-legged stool. You need teachers, quality teachers, caring parents, and students willing to learn. And if students aren't willing to learn, we can't force them to learn in our society. They have a right to fail, let them fail, and let them deal with the consequences of their life.
Yeah, let them repeat a grade, if they have to repeat a grade.
So in the recommendations that I presented to the school board regarding grading we had tremendous support for the community on it, and the board still hasn't adopted it, but part of those recommendations addressed those issues. And we wanted schools to get guidance counselors, psychologists. We've got all these resources. They need to be used. And we need to get them involved, get parents involved. If there aren't any parents, we need to get community members involved. Part of what I want to do is get nonprofits, get our churches, get people involved in our schools who can help these children. We don't know what their circumstances are, but we can't take, we had this problem at the gifted school with my kids. There was a distraction in the class, and my son couldn't focus and couldn't get anything done. So I don't think that we need to throw those kids away. I think we need to help those kids, and we have resources in our schools to do it, and we need to use those guidance counselors who don't return my phone calls.
Okay, this guy in the second row here has a question. He was next.
Hey, once again, Montreal part of me, and my main focus is on youth. Education is the key. Virginia is at an all-time low rate within dropout students as far as middle school and high school. How are ways that we could challenge these students and teachers by influencing them more on how to get that education instead of shunning them away and making them deemed bad or a bad apple of the school. America is losing in the economic, not economic, but academic war. As far as we have countries, we also have third world countries that are doing way better than us in schooling. How can we challenge these people as far as the school board, superintendents, teachers, principals, parents, and like she said, the community, to influence the youth that are not being properly challenged in these schools? How can they get the better attention that they need? It's because some children they need more attention than others. So is myself. I went to Blair Middle School in Norfolk, Virginia. The school board had came into terms that Norfolk will hold a certain class for the students that are behind, which is called D block. And what that does, it penetrates on those who are lacking behind, and it also pushes them up, pushing them up the scale. It's very disappointing when I hear teachers that are supposed to be the role models of these students, and they look up to them for this education. And I'm not going to say most, but I'm going to say it's a huge percentage of teachers that only come to work for a check.
Can we give them a chance to answer your
Okay.
question?
Well, there are, like I said, Virginia Beach pays our teachers the highest in the region, so there are a lot of people who just come to school for the check. But then again, there are a lot of dedicated teachers. And the best place to reach children is early on. We've got a lot of youth programs in a lot of our Title I schools. I think we do need to expand them. We've got an excellent mentoring program at Betty F. Williams School. We have a mentoring program at Rosemont Elementary. Rosemont Elementary just received the Governor's Award of Excellence. And they attributed most of that to the mentoring program. Once we get the community leaders involved, some of the churches, and start these mentoring programs for before and after school program, that will inspire the kids to stick and give them a good basic education. As far as when they get to high school, this year Virginia Beach received a grant. We're going to start an apprenticeship program at Green Run High School, where we're going to be able to match up students with apprenticeship programs and different other summer internships, so they can find other skills and other jobs that aren't college related. I think one of our big problems at Virginia Beach is the administration wants all of our teachers to have master's degrees. They want everybody in the administration to have doctorates. I think there's an arrogance to that they think everybody needs to go to college to get a degree to have a successful life. And I don't think that's true. I think we need to start concentrating more on the work skills later.
And I think this is a fantastic question, because you are right. We have a problem with academics in our country, and we have to address them at the local level. And I go back to we need to get the community involved, like Stephen said. When my son was in first grade, I think she was one of the best teachers he ever had. She demanded parent volunteers be in her classroom. And she would break up her kids into reading groups, and I would be the parent volunteer helping the kids with their assignment while she worked individually with those different reading groups, because all the kids were on different levels. And that, my son learned more in that 1 year than I think in several years combined because of that. Also, I just heard that there's something going into effect to identify gifted children at the Renaissance Academy. I think that a lot of our bright kids are misidentified. They're labeled with behavior problems. And I think that you'll find a higher percentage of kids at the Renaissance Academy who are gifted, and they have not been identified as such. And we need to teach them in the proper manner to avoid those behavior problems.
It's a great question, and Montrell, you're a great person to ask the question. You said earlier that you're a felon, and you've obviously gotten out. Whatever you were doing wrong, you've turned around. You're here tonight. I applaud you for that. There are two things that I want to. I like what what the other two panelists had to say. There are two things I want to add. And by the way, There are 2 at-large seats that are up this year. I wanted to make that clear, so.
So Ken and I can both get it.
Yeah, you can vote for Vicky and me. Stephen's running in a different district. You can actually vote for all 3 of us. And by the way, one of the things that someone was talking about earlier, I'm getting a little off track, but I'm going to come back to, is respect. There are 11 candidates running for school board this year. 8 of them didn't come here and think that, 8 of them didn't think you were important enough to come here tonight. We're here tonight.
Okay,
Okay.
this lady right
All right, well, let me answer the question.
Oh, okay, you haven't answered it yet?
I'm sorry, 2 things. 2 things. One, we need to have a variety of different ways that we teach our kids. We do a pretty good job of that, but we can do better. Stephen touched on one of them. We need to have better and more available vocational opportunities. Because he's right, not every kid needs to go to college to be a success in life, and that's not the best path for every kid. That's number one. Number 2, let teachers teach. Stop micromanaging them from one central office as to how they need to teach and what they need to do on a daily basis and so forth, what they can and can't do. The school board sets the curriculum, sets the standards. Let the teachers play to their strengths so that they can inspire the kids in their best way, so that we leave fewer people behind, because those kids actually want to learn because they're learning from motivated teachers.
Okay, you were next.
Was that me?
Yes.
Oh,
you.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have 6 people that are lined up to ask questions here, so.
Okay, I love the college is not for everybody. It is not for everybody, and a lot of the points that you're making are great. One thing that I've been talking about for 20-something years, back then saying if we do not correct this, it will be the downfall of America, which I believe it is now, starting with the homes, the neighborhoods, the communities, the schools, law enforcement, everything, and it is, and some people may get offended when I say this, the rise of the baby mommy, baby daddy subculture in America.
Yeah.
Teachers are not supposed to be the parents of these children. Youth groups, if I'm a teacher, I'm not supposed to be your child's mentor and role model and this and that and the other thing. Your children, if children were not being born into poverty and they were being, equipped to come to school and learn because they're coming from intact family households, you're going to have a lot fewer kids who are in all of these problems, that we're facing.
Marlene, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. I'm Marlene Kessler, Chair of Virginia Beach Taxpayer Alliance, and I'm I'm a speech pathologist in the school system for 30+ years. And one of the issues that I see as a major problem, and I would like to see these potential candidates for school board address the fact that currently Lyndon Remius, who is the city's auditor, has a transparent audit. He audits and it comes out in the paper. He certainly presents to organizations. He's presented yearly to ours. And whether the city does anything about it or not, their dirty laundry is out there for everyone. So last time he presented, I asked about the city side, or the school side, because to my knowledge, I had yet in all these years ever seen anything from the school side. I know that when they built a particular high school, there was a $150,000 sign error, but we never heard that. I found that from other sources. So what can you do to see that the auditor on the school side has those things public so that it is transparent? Because we as taxpayers never see the screw-ups that the school system does. Never see where they build a building and they made mistakes. Technology was incorrect or whatever. No one ever sees that. The people in the buildings do, but no one out in the public does.
Vicky?
So the schools do have their own auditors. I just recently, a couple of weeks ago, because I'm trying to get data on what we're paying our staff, our non-teaching staff, our administrators, and first I was told it's going to cost you $200 to get that information. And then I responded, I know that you've already compiled that information for the Virginian pilot and they've paid for it, you can't charge me too. So it took 3 weeks, but I finally got that information through a FOIA. That information is available through FOIA. If you ask for it, they have to give it to us. And those are the types of things that our school board is currently not looking at. I mean, as I said with this grading issue, the school board wouldn't have known about it had I not asked them about it. There has to be more transparency, and the school board has to rule the superintendent's office, not the other way around. But I agree. There has to be so many mistakes and so much money that we could find that can be put towards students rather than through the next latest and greatest gadget.
Lyndon Ramirez is a good friend of mine, and he is the standard for how auditing ought to be done. He is one of the best city auditors in the country. And you're right, we're not getting that standard in the schools. We're not getting that transparency in the school system, and we should. And it's up to a school board that leads to make sure that happens. That doesn't happen when you've got a school board like the one we have right now that's deferential to the administration. You need a school board that leads and insists on that transparency, insists on that high standard. One of the things I would like to do is see an audit of the budget and a study done, and I think the auditor might be a good place to have this done, to find out how much money individual teachers are having to pay out of their own pocket for classroom resources. Teachers are always complaining that they're not paid enough, although we don't have a shortage of teachers, so the market, what they're getting paid pretty much satisfies the market. But one way that they could have more money in their pocket, have more motivation, and our kids could be guaranteed the resources they need, is to reallocate funds from administration, from bureaucracy, into the classrooms so that teachers don't have to pay for that stuff themselves.
There's a difference between the auditor for the city and the auditor for the school board. City auditor works for the city council. School board auditor works for the administration. So the reports go to the administration. The administration don't like the reports, they will kill them. I think, and I will push for it, to push this auditor to work directly for the school board. We need to start cutting, it's supposed to be a check on the administration. Our current administration and school board are not very open. They have their meetings the exact same day as city council meetings, so that our community leaders have to choose which one they have to go to. They can't go to both. I think we need to be more open. The city of Virginia Beach just lost a civil rights lawsuit against their website because you can't find any information on their website. And a federal judge has reordered them to rework their website to make more information open to the public. And I think we do need a more open system.
It's your turn, the guy with the hat.
Feds.
Feds, yes.
Feds.
Dr. Who?
Dr. Who.
Peace and love.
Kenny.
I'm Kenny Creel. I run the Men of Distinction Mentoring Program out of Bay of Williams. We work with the 4th and 5th grade boys. And we've been doing it for 4 years. We also partner with the 3rd Precinct. But I really wanted to speak really from the perspective of the children, something that I've heard a lot of feedback from the children, even my own children, particularly around identity, because it was brought in earlier in the room about the Dred Scott case, being identified as Black Americans. My children have actually come to me and asked me why are they being identified with an adjective instead of a noun. And it just causes a lot of confusion in the minds of the children. And when we identify the children using an adjective as Black, African American, etc., then it just causes a lot of confusion. And they turn around and take an SOL test, and they're graded on their language and their English comprehension. So I just feel like, obviously based off of the 8 parts of speech, we're causing some confusion in the minds of the children. And I really would like to know, are you guys aware of this, or what would you guys like to do to address that concern?
I'm not entirely sure that I understand the question. I want to start, by the way, the Men of Distinction program that you and Pyrie Burton, another good friend of mine, put together has been a great success, and I want to thank you for it. That has been a real boon to the community. I'm not sure that I understand your question. Are you getting, well, yeah, help me understand the question better.
Yes. All right, for example, there is, according to all true divine records, there's no legal Black or colored race attached to the human family. And my children, they attend Virginia Beach Public Schools, and a lot of them are identified as being black or African American. And this is not their nationality. So a lot of times when I come and talk, when I come to the school, even when my children say it all the time, you know, they keep calling me black, people call me African American. And again, if if that's not their nationality, but they're being identified as this, that's causing a lot of confusion in the minds of the children. So specifically, it's just, I feel like we're not, even when I looked at, for example, when I signed my son up for school, in his paperwork, it stated that his resolved race was African American. Now, to be categorized as resolved, it indicates that there was an issue that was resolved somehow by someone. And he was identified as African American, but that's not his nationality or his identity. So I had to go to the school, I had to talk to them, and I had to give them paperwork, and it's just a lot of unnecessary stuff, and I really feel like I know it's causing confusion in the children, because I get that question a lot. A lot of the children, I mean, we've worked with over 100 children in that area. A lot of those children are identified as minority children. And they know their color spectrum. They understand that they're not black.
Okay.
And they get confused. So
All
I
right.
just wanna,
All right, so there are a couple of issues here. First off, can we all agree that we're all Americans?
Yeah, take all that stuff.
Okay, so I've never been big on hyphenated Americans. And I do think that, unfortunately, there's more focus on race than there ought to be. Now, that said, I also think that, I don't think it can be denied, that black people in this country do have a different experience than white people in this country. And that's not to point the finger of blame at anyone, it's to acknowledge something that's real. And I think that helping people like me to understand the experience of someone like you and vice versa is helpful in this community of man, I think was the term that you used. And in that regard, you don't make an issue of race for political reasons, you don't make an issue of race for divisive reasons, but you acknowledge that there are different experiences, and in acknowledging that, you try to find ways to bring people together through better understanding.
Unfortunately, in the South, we need to be conscious of race. We've had a bad history, we are working on that. However, if you look at the city of Virginia Beach and basically the state school system, 4 years ago, the state came out with grading standards. They said that 90% of Asian males will pass the Algebra 1 test. Only 74% of African American males would pass the Algebra 1 test. Racism still exists in our system. Unfortunately, we do need to track this to keep trying to make things right. In Virginia Beach, African Americans make up 25% of the student population for elementary and middle school. They only make up 10% of the gifted program. Something's not right there. There's one elementary school here in Virginia Beach that has 600 students. 8 of them are African Americans. Something's not right there. We've got schools that have 65% African Americans right across the street from a school that has only got 10% African Americans. So you can't say, well, they're zoned because it's zoning. No, it's not. They went and redistricted W.T. Cook about 3 years ago. W.T. Cook Elementary School is at the ocean front. Logically, what you should have done is taken the people who live at Chicks Beach, is it Chicks Beach right there, next to Rudy Inlet? Croatan. Take the students from Croatan and sent them to SeaTac Elementary School, right down the street. But the people at Croatan went and complained. They are very affluent, they are very white, they spend a lot of money on school board elections. What the school board decided to do was bus students from Laskin Road on the complete opposite side of Birdneck Road to go to SeaTac so they can keep the Croatan students going to W.T. Cook. And because they weren't paying attention to doing that, W.T. Cook lost its Title I status, and we lost $900,000 in direct federal aid to that school.
When I signed my kids up for kindergarten, and each year I had to fill out this form, it said, what is the race of your child? I did not complete it. I got a copy back of it to me, and it said Caucasian. I went into the office and I said, I did not fill this out. Who filled it out? And they said, well, we're supposed to put down what we think you are. I said, my kids come from different nationalities. My mom is a My mom comes from a German Cherokee background. You want to put Native American on there maybe? And we should not be highlighting our differences. We need to unite. We don't highlight our differences in the United States military. If we did, we would not be united as a nation in our military and our defense. And we need to it's about the content of your character and not the color of your skin. And we need to stop talking about it, not just locally, but nationally.
Okay, Michaela is next. Okay, I have Michaela, and then the gentleman sitting next to her, and then you, and then Robert, and then Don, and we are not gonna have time for all these questions if you don't keep your questions short and your answers short. Michaela?
All right, I have a multitude of things I could go into. I am a Virginia Beach City Public Schools teacher. I love every single student I've ever had the privilege of teaching, every single one. But yes, we spend a lot of money out of our pockets. My husband rolls his eyes. My question is, I love what you said, Vicki, about how this teacher demanded parental volunteers. I love that. I taught at Cook. I had a pretty high homeless population. I needed my parents to be putting food on the table and making sure my kids had a place to sleep. How could we encourage private, because I like what's going on at Betty F. I love that. How can we encourage our community, our businesses, our people that are able to give? How can we get them to give their time? Maybe not at, like, my kids went to Lincoln. They don't need any more parent volunteers there. They got plenty of them. How can we get people that have the time and ability to donate their time in schools where the parents are worried about having a place to sleep? How could we, what do you think we could do?
I think we got that.
Okay, the first thing I think we need to get the local churches involved and start the mentoring program. That'll start bringing people in. The other thing we can do is, like I said, Lincoln has a plethora of volunteers. We can start a volunteer pool. Who wants to go to W.T. Cook next week and volunteer there for a few weeks? That wouldn't be too much of a problem, but it's a matter of getting the community involved. And generally, it's the local community we need to get involved for local schools. Thank you.
I think we need to get our principals to be proactive in making that happen, making these mentorship programs work. I know some schools, the principals tell the teachers, no, we don't want parent volunteers in here because the principals don't want the parents knowing what's going on. So the principals need to be held accountable, and they need to be the ones, they're being paid a handsome amount, they need to be the ones that are making those things happen.
Several things. I support charter schools. Virginia Beach has one of the few charter schools in Virginia. Charter schools are a way to get the community much more involved. So that's number one. A school board that leads would consist of members that actually get out into the community, get into businesses, get into churches, get into civic leagues, and actively solicit their participation and help in the schools as well. Third, something that Stephen alluded to earlier, apprenticeship programs, which is kind of along the lines of charter schools, but more along the lines of vocational opportunities. Get businesses involved in providing vocational apprenticeship opportunities. These are all ways we can get the community more involved.
Okay, and it's your question next. Yes, your question next. And then yours.
My name's Larry Korn. When I was in school, in grade school, there was 35 students in every class. There were 5 first grades, 5 second grades, 5 third grades, all the way up through the 6th grade. But the classes were separated, the students were separated by their ability to learn, not have everybody mixed in the same class. So the kids that could learn quickly and fast were in a classroom here. The other students that didn't learn as fast or whatever the reasons were, they were in another class where they could all get the same amount of attention. But now we've got everybody, all these commingled of students, and the teachers are all teaching to the least common denominator in the classroom. So the student in that chart, in the Renaissance Academy that you say are probably gifted students, they're there because they're sitting in a classroom bored to tears and so they're not doing anything. That's something we need to address.
Okay.
I agree. Our administration is against grouping children by their ability level. Specifically, we do it in the high school. Why aren't we doing it in elementary and middle school? We do have Kemp's Landing ODC, which used to be a wonderful school, but that can't take all of the gifted kids. We need to do it at the local school level. There are gifted cluster programs within the elementary or middle school. I don't think they're being managed properly right now. So we need some answers on that, and I do think it's so hard for teachers to teach at 5 different ability levels. So, I'm with you, and I think we need to get some answers.
The concept of mainstreaming is the issue,
Yes.
and it's screwing everything up.
Well, mainstreaming is something that comes up more with special needs kids, and that's a different subject that I can address if you'd like at another time. But I agree with you. One of the first things we need to do in identifying gifted students is acknowledge that different students learn differently. There are kids that aren't showing up as gifted because they're not having the opportunity to get an education that is conducive to their way of learning. And so we need to be more aware of that. We need to have more opportunities for kids to be able to get their education in the best way that works for them. In doing all of that, one thing I want to say is, especially at the high school level, we need to be careful about not dividing the kids up in a way that would stigmatize some of them. Because unfortunately, once you're in high school, if they want to look at going to college or other opportunities, that stuff shows up on the record. So when we are finding the ways to divide the kids up in a manner that's conducive to their abilities, we need to do it in a way that doesn't leave a group in a situation where they'd be stigmatized.
Steven?
Okay. Well, actually, I've had 2 kids go through the Virginia Beach school system, and through the elementary school and the middle school, we do break kids apart into academic groups. In elementary school at Princess Anne, where both my sons went to, there were 4 classrooms, and when they started in 1st grade, they started doing it, but they move kids only over the summer. They don't move them during the year. So by the time they got to 5th grade, there was an advanced class that was semi-gifted, 2 regular classes, and a slower class. And the slower class ended up with an extra teaching assistant to give them the kids the extra attention they needed. In middle school, they have different, what they call cores. At Corporate Landing, they had the eagles, the falcons, and different types of birds. And as that they did is they broke the children into those different cores based on their academic abilities. And when you get to high school, if it's broken, it's basically you get what you get. If you're an intelligent person, you go to the AP classes. If you're not, if you're an average student, you go to the regular English classes. If you're doing very poorly in English, they will steer them towards what they call the LD classes, which is still an English class, but it goes a lot slower than the normal English class. But in high school, it's semi-like college. You sign up for the class that you want to get into.
Okay, Baltimore?
All right. Go Orioles. Just as there are good federal government employees and bad federal government employees, and good state government employees and bad state government employees, and good city employees and bad city employees, there's also good teachers and bad teachers. And what all of that has in common is a 6-letter, very dirty word, especially when it comes to teaching children, and that word is tenure. Because if you're guaranteed a job and they can't take it away from you unless you commit a crime, you can go in and put in a half-assed performance and get away with it. The antidote to that, because you can't get rid of the tenure system that's in place, is merit pay for good teachers. And I want to know what each of you feel about rewarding the good teachers as opposed to just paying the same scale regardless of whether a teacher is busting her ass or sliding on the ice.
Okay.
I support merit pay. And I've talked a lot about the teachers union. Merit pay is kryptonite to the teachers union. They hate it because it means accountability. Like I said, I'm running on the ideas of excellence and accountability, and merit pay is one of the best ways to ensure accountability. You talked about tenure, and one issue that we can't get around, just as a matter of law, is that the courts have decided that public sector employees have a due process right in their jobs, which means that when a teacher is not doing the work up to standard, there's a whole due process, there's a whole process that has to be made available to them before they can, we can get rid of them, and the teachers' unions get involved in all of that to make it as difficult as possible.
Okay.
That's a fact of life, but we need to do the best we can within that fact of life.
There is no tenure in Virginia Beach Public Schools. Every teacher is signed a one-year contract. At the beginning of the year, their contracts are automatically renewed at the discretion of the principal. Principal can get rid of teachers over the summer. However, it is almost impossible to get rid of a teacher during the school year. Teacher just files an appeal, goes to the teachers union-run school board, and the teachers union-run school board will not fire anybody.
I support performance-based pay. I think teachers should be graded on their performance, not by test scores, but how they're interacting with kids, how they interact with the parents. I mean, just like any private sector employee gets rewarded, bonuses, whatever, on performance, I think teachers should be based on performance.
Robert, you got the next question.
Yeah, all of these programs that you've been speaking of that you want to implement, all these tutoring programs, these have been talked about for the last 3 to 4 decades. None of it's happened, none of it's worked. There's that old saying, life is tough, but it's even tougher if you're stupid.
That's right.
If you go to Paris Island, or you go through the seals like Don Roby, and you don't make it, you fail. I don't care what other things you do in life, we want the very best. And if you can't cut it, tough. That's the way it is.
Okay.
Let me clarify one thing.
That a question?
Yes. When you get elected to the school board, will you